Welcome to My Wild Magic with me, your host, Adrienne Cobb. Join me on a journey back home to your truest self in this inspiring, enlightening, and entertaining show. After a near-death experience in a car crash at 15 years old, I made a choice to stay and brought back with me 3 simple truths that I found from the other side. Love is all there is. Our time is over here quicker than we think, and we all have a purpose, a soul blueprint to fulfill. On this show, you will find a higher purpose, a creative expression, and unique soul attributes that you can bring forth into this world. Stay tuned with me for the next hour and find your higher purpose on My Wild Magic, starting now. Welcome, everyone. I'm your host, Adrienne Cobb, and you are listening to My Wild Magic with Adrienne on Transformation Talk Radio. Today, we have Tammy Scarlett with us, and she is here. She is executive director with Unify. Some of you out there might follow Unify. I highly recommend you do if you don't. So in this episode of the Indigo Soul Tribe with Tammy, and she herself is an indigo child. She's indigo crystal energy. Crystal adult, and she's making a major difference in the world. And in this series, I really like interviewing people who actually have that indigo energy to them and the difference they're making, because that's really the whole thing about indigos. When they come into the planet, an indigo child that grows up into be an indigo adult, they're coming in with super kind of awesome traits about themselves, intuitive natures, and a real drive to be of service and things of that nature. So, with Tammy, she's making of how people doing good in the world are oftentimes fragmented, and how we can become defragmented to make a bigger difference in our local community. So she works in finance and global humanitarian efforts. She serves, like I said, as executive director of Unify the World, a global nonprofit for world peace. Which seeks to unify the good by facilitating engagement of individuals in global unity events and meditations. They do amazing world meditations. I participated in several myself, and really are looking forward to the next one. The other thing that I thought that I didn't know about Tammy, though, is that she was raised on a Native American reservation outside of Seattle, and that she's worked with many Native First Nation communities from the Four Corners to the Yukon to New England, and credits her experiences there with her being her greatest teachers, providing her with a lens through which to see all cultures' experiences as equally valuable, which is a super big deal in the world, I think, these days. I think there's a big push for that. And Tammy combines her education in anthropology, business, and psychology with her experience in finance, executive management, and leadership to bring solutions to global humanitarian efforts. So that was a big intro, Tammy. So I'm hoping that, yeah, you got to live up to that one. I'm telling you, you got it going on. You are just rocking the world, man.
Well, yeah, I don't know about that, but doing what I can do every day and definitely trying to learn from it as I go.
So. Yeah, well, you have like I said, that indigo superpower, crystal energy. And I'm just curious, have you really, not everybody knows about being an indigo, but do you know a little bit about it? I know you just recently had a daughter, like a little baby, and I would probably consider her in the indigo child as well. But do you consider yourself that? Like, have you studied that at all for yourself?
I have not studied it very deeply. I have been referred to as an indigo child or an indigo adult by many people over the years, and so I've accepted it as one of my identities that I'm viewed as on here on Earth, which is great. But yeah, no, I'm definitely not the encyclopedia on that one.
That's exactly, but it's interesting that people say that about you. I'm curious what people say about you that they so clearly see you as indigo, as a person, like there's something kind of unique about you when you're an indigo. So what do you think what have people said that make you?
It's funny. It feels like being in the hot seat on things that people have said. But reflecting back, I mean, people have said that they feel very comfortable in my presence, that they experience a sense of vulnerability and even sometimes like healing and understanding, and that they just feel like I'm here to do something that is full of light or full of good things.
There you go.
But yeah, like I said, I haven't studied it, so I don't know.
Yeah, no, that's cool. You're describing it well. And see, and the reason I'm asking you is I think a lot of people don't necessarily know they're indigo, but they'll have reflect back to them. You're kind of the odd one in the family, or you're super focused on service, or you go above and beyond the call, or you're really intuitive, or you got this peaceful healing nature. But your response was perfect because, like I said, a lot of people don't actually know they're indigo, but they will get the reflection back. So I appreciate you sharing that.
Yeah,
Even though you're not the
absolutely.
encyclopedia of it. Sounds like you're
Definitely
an
not.
encyclopedia of a bunch of other things that we can talk about today. So
Sure.
we'll move on to that. Okay, so one of the things that you've told me about that you're really passionate about is, in the field of that I don't really know a lot about, but it's regarding, so now we're going to move to where I'm not the encyclopedia of it, right? But it's regarding much about the global effectiveness and humanitarian efforts. And can you explain a little more about that? What you do and what you mean by that?
Sure. I grew up working in humanitarian efforts in a bunch of different capacities. I was raised in church, several different kinds of churches growing up, and often did missions trips to both in local communities or foreign countries. And that was how it started. And then got involved in other nonprofits, doing all kinds of work, in various places, the ones that you listed, also in Africa and just different places around the world. And in my experience over the years, I also toured, by the way, to hundreds of different churches in my high school and college years because I was on drama and singing teams where that was part of it. You would go and stay in a host home over the weekend and stay with a family and then do something, put on something for the children, some drama
And is
or
that
music.
with any particular religion or?
I was raised in Christianity, so it was all Christian churches. But I know that lots of other churches and religions have very similar things where part of the ministry or the good work that they're trying to do for their local or larger communities is to share things or beyond just like, feeding the homeless. Okay, good. That's something we need to do. But they have other programs too that delve into the arts. And those were the ones that I was participating in over those years. So it gave me exposure. We would go out during college every other weekend. So literally over the years, I was in hundreds of churches and hundreds of homes and experienced the differences where people would, have varying aspects of their versions of interpretations of beliefs, the same belief system, but different interpretations of it, and different ways that they approached the same kind of solutions to challenges in their local communities. So I felt like that gave me a little bit of perspective. And the one thing that stood out probably as the biggest pain point over time was just watching how, and again, not just in the church, this is also in nonprofits, NGOs, et cetera, watching how people get very disillusioned and discouraged if they have been in it long enough in whatever the thing is that they're participating in. They begin to see some in-workings that maybe are politicized, or maybe somebody just isn't, behaving well or something, and they feel let down by that because they start to have attached themselves to it. So the one thing that I wanted to touch on today is the idea of don't confuse your purpose with the path. And especially don't confuse your purpose with the people on your path, because most of us try to get involved in doing good in the world because we see it as directly correlated to a higher purpose or a greater good. But people are messy. So, I've
That's
seen
an
people get.
understatement. Yeah.
Yeah. So if people get let down by that, then it's easy to kind of throw the baby out with the bathwater. But and then that can lead to burnout and just maybe giving up on something that would otherwise be a light path for you. So the truth is that we don't have a detailed instruction manual on how to do things right. And I'm seeing people, because of the pressures from the past year and a half, it's a little bit of a pressure cooker for all different types of relationships on the planet right now. And I'm seeing people have these conflicts, even in the best groups around. You can have the closest knit group, you can have the best of friends, you can have the best organization, and there's still going to be some conflict in it. There will be anyway, but right now it's like a little bit accentuated. And so, looking at the fact that we don't have an instruction manual that's given to us for how we can come into the new age. Like, nobody wrote us instructions for like, here's how it's going to play out, and then here's what you say next or do next. And therefore, we have this opportunity, this very unique and beautiful opportunity to be able to be the opportunity to be able to be the reprogramming of the way that humanity reacts to conflict, how we do resolution, how we do peace, how we do healing. So if somebody offends us or something's done messily and it hurts, it's very okay and necessary to acknowledge that hurt. And then can we invite those people that are in this space trying to do good in the world to maybe join us in an experiment with how we can do it better this time around. And I believe that templates out for humanity, a way that we can all start doing it better. I believe that resonates out. The more of us that are doing that, the more that we all learn, oh, hey, this is how we can do that. And then we start doing it better.
Well, and that's one of the, actually one of the Indigo, codes of honor is that we can do it better. You know what I mean? Because Indigos, what happens is they're really kind of, in a way, when they're coming to the planet, they're coming in almost from the future or from a higher dimension. And they're all about improving the world and accessing the DNA of the human, of our human soul to be better, to basically make the world a better place and to have that drive and the energy. And I love what you said, though, about all of the, going to so many different homes and so many different places, even though it might have been underneath, the one religion of Christianity, you're being exposed to many different people and how their perception of the world exists and how they problem solve. I know growing up, I actually was not raised a religion per se, which I think was a benefit to me because it allows me to really have a lot of compassion and understanding for other people, right? But in my teenage years and 20s and stuff, I was very curious about really probably just my spirituality in general. And I went and toured a whole bunch of different churches, whether it was, from studying Krishna to the Jewish religion, to Christianity, to the gospel churches in the South. And it is fascinating being present to so many different people, especially when you get into other countries. Like it says, like you've traveled to other countries, you really see a lot. So we're going to take a quick break. You're listening to Adrian with My Wild Magic. We'll be back in just a moment with Tammy Scarlett talking about how to make the world a better place. Back. I'm Adrian, and you're listening to My Wild Magic with Adrian, and we're talking with Tammy Scarlett, who's the executive director of Unify.org, a global nonprofit for world peace. I'd highly recommend people go on to Facebook, Instagram, or Unify.org and sign up to get their notifications. They do amazing global world prayers. Tammy, just quickly with Unify in the world meditations, global meditations, what's your take on that? Like when it comes to people joining together in a global meditation, which is sort of a bigger version of cooperation like we've been talking about, how do you feel is the benefit and the pulling that off? Because you're one of the people who helped to organize that. So.
Yeah, well, Unify has done these major level global things over the years. We're on, I think, coming into our 10th year now. And in the past, we've worked collaboratively with the UN. We're the largest reach on a peace day. Back in, I believe it was 2016, was around 2 billion. But we host these global synchronized meditations at different points annually. And I think that some people, even if they're familiar with meditation, they think, okay, well, that's cool, but there's an aspect of it that feels a little intangible. Especially if I'm joining this global thing, I can only really join virtually. We're not all cramming the entire world into our living room. And so then, you have to, I guess, get into the mindset of what that level of connectivity means or allows. For me, I worked a little bit on this in grad school, being able to measure collective impact. And although my studies were in terms of how we can measure moving forward the UN SDGs or the Sustainable Development Goals, the same principle really is true for anything that we put our efforts towards. And in many ways, meditation is probably the easiest or the simplest of those in terms of effort. We have the Maharishi effect, right, that we can look to kind of understand what that means, how it's measured, how it works. And meditation can even just be the simplicity of quieting the mind, just being in stillness and listening, being present and noticing. It's especially effective, I believe, when there's an intention that accompanies the time together. So this is a principle that, like, again, taking it back to being raised in Christianity, we were always taught where two or more are gathered, right? That's the principle. God dwells there, love dwells there, source, it dwells there, in that place. And that statement assumes that that's surrounding an intention. When two or more gathered, like for a thing to come to pass or for something to unfold. In meditation, we're essentially holding that together as a prayer. Our hearts, our minds, our spirits, our bodies even are sitting in a place where we're at, and somehow aligning and connecting with everyone else around the globe on this one thing. So oftentimes we'll do it for peace, because that's one of our major things at Unify that we want to see come to pass in the world, and not in some cheesy like world peace kind of way, but in a way where it really just completely embodies our hearts and our souls and our beings, and becomes who we are, the embodiment of who we are on the planet as humanity and all living beings. So holding that intention, I think, is powerful. But again, if people have more questions about it, they can look up the Maharishi effect and see that studies were done where when even small populations, it only took 1%, or I think slightly less than 1% of most of these populations, and they could see over time that there were direct correlations to the effects of what were happening in these communities. So meditation would be done with this intention in this city, and then you would go back several months later and see that the crime rates had plummeted in that area. And so those kinds of correlated studies are, I think, the easiest way for our logical minds to filter through what is possible as a result of something as simple as meditation.
Yeah, and we are spirit before we are matter. You know what I mean? We are spirit beings, literally energetic beings. And so when you take the energetic consciousness of who we are and apply it to something, which is the whole point of being a human being, it does make a major effect. I've always been, really into the coming together two or more and making a big difference that way. So when you come in to actually work with a group, I think this is something, whether it's somebody who works in an office, whether it's somebody who works in other areas of their community. You see a lot of breakdowns going on in community right now all over the place. There's been riots, there's been defund the police, and then there is riots for Black Lives Matters, and then there is it's just so many things all at once of people wanting to be heard. And then you've got to have somebody, like, if you want to raise community, if you want to take a community and raise it, because there have been abuse in the police force, and yes, there are rights that have been crossed, and yes, there are abuses that go on all the way. How would you think, because there's a lot of, like you were talking about how we kind of fragment as communities, again, whether it's in your family, your office, your church, your whatever it is you're doing, how do you feel that people can defragment and move forward together in a place where right now a lot of people, it seems like their emotional body is very childlike, like we're acting out of wounded child energy, and so we're not necessarily maybe thinking as clearly as maybe what we would as our higher selves. So what do you recommend as a future thinker?
Yeah, well, first of all, you were making me tear up, touching on all those things, because I feel it very deeply, and it's true. I mean, my friends, my family, our community, the global community, you can't ignore it. It's completely irrefutable. The level of kind of even anguish and stress and that everybody's really carrying right now. Even those who have kind of had a better year than others are still in the trenches, kind of, as it were, and it hurts. And I think you talked about us being in kind of like the wounded child as a collective group of humanity. I think that the part of the solution that will help us through that hump, or can help us individually even to get through these struggles we might be having with employers or relationships or whatever, is to
government,
or government,
political, medical. There's so much.
I think that I think we have to go to compassion. I think we must go to compassion. Compassion for ourselves, for, I know so many people are frustrated that they don't have the stamina to make it through this. I can't like homeschool my kids and work my job and, pay these extra medical bills and, especially when I don't have any support system because I haven't seen friends or family in a year and a half or whatever, or just not as frequently. Plus, many have suffered loss this year, like levels and levels beyond the norm. And we need, if we are the wounded child, we also need to show up as the compassionate parent, right? How can I be the one who enters this with compassion, and first on myself, because I have to practice that first, right? But for all those around me. And that was kind of what I was touching on, at least the heart of it was what I was trying to touch on when we were speaking previously about inviting people to an experiment to do it differently. In order for me to be at a place where I can even approach a situation where I've just been wounded or where I feel depleted, and ask people if they'd like to join me in an experiment where we do it differently, I have to be able to have something in me, right, that allows for that to happen. And I think that thing is compassion. If I can say, hey, it's okay, this super sucked, where we all just were, that conversation was awful, that meeting was awful, that decision that you made was awful, whatever. I'm upset, I'm hurt, they're upset, they're hurt, but can we rally together on this one thing, that we can have compassion for ourselves and each other, and that we want things to be better. We want things to be different, and just experiment with how that might look. So I think compassion really makes the way for us here.
Well, I mean, it's all about Thich Nhat Hanh. I mean, the Vietnamese Buddhist monk, he's all about compassion, and has a lot of evidence to that. And just acknowledging other people's suffering would be, like a grounded aspect of what compassion would be, is in acknowledging our own suffering, which a lot of times we want to emotionally bypass or spiritually bypass. And then also just acknowledging the other person's feelings goes a long way to resolving conflict. Like, just to say, I hear you, I understand you, and this is how I feel, and having compassion for it. But then it sounds like what I'm also hearing is, being able to also make the higher cause something that we come together about. Like, we may disagree about a lot of things, but there is this higher cause, in a sense, that makes the difference as to why we got involved. And so that becomes the focus, because when you're looking at group energy, there's basically like an overlighting, like a deva, like an overlighting presence, a higher presence, an eros of love for that higher cause. And that actually will help as well when you connect to that higher source energy and let it start to manage as well some of that energy. So
I always assume that we all have that in there.
Yeah, right.
I guess I can't assume that.
Yeah, exactly right. A lot of people will, their hurt and their pain, the unresolved hurt and pain. I find that with a lot of the clients I work with and stuff, and just sessions I do with people over the years, is that we always want to project outside of ourselves what's happening to us in a sense, right? But the minute you go back and you can sort of track back in your energy field where you might have that in your history, your childhood, some other experience, and you start to have compassion for that, it immediately fast forwards to have compassion for the present. So I'm loving our conversation. We're going to take another quick break. So I am Adrienne. You're listening to My Wild Magic with Adrienne with our guest, Tammy Scarlett. And we will be back in just a moment. Welcome. I am Adrienne, and you're listening to My Wild Magic with Adrienne. And we are here with Tammy Scarlett. So Tammy, is there any way that people can get in touch with you if they wanted to get more involved? Just anything that you wanted to put out there to share with
Sure. Yeah. I mean, we have events and meditations and all kinds of wonderful, enriching experiences and things going on pretty constantly at Unify. So if you want to be a part of that or learn more about that or hear about it, you can find us at unify.org. If you want to reach me directly, you can send me an email. It's easy. It's tammy@unify.org.
Got it. Yeah. And then you also, we kind of touched on it briefly, but you also do mortgage. You help people
I
get
do.
homes. Tell me,
Yeah, I do home loans
that.
all over the country.
All over the country. I was about to say, because some people can only do it there. Because I'm like, man, if I was going to be buying a home, I would for sure want to work with you just because you have such high
Aw.
consciousness. And I know
Thank
that's a
you.
big deal. Getting mortgages on homes and stuff is a really big deal,
It is. It's a really
especially right now.
emotional.
I mean, the market is just insane from what I've
Yep.
heard from clients all over the country. And,
Yes.
home is a deep level of, groundedness and sacredness for us. And,
Mhm.
yeah. So what were you going to say about that?
Well, it's a very emotional. I mean, money is a thing that it's a carrier of energy, right? So our relationship to money is constantly changing. And because the home is usually the biggest purchase someone will make in their lives, even if they do it again, it's usually because they're buying another either larger or smaller home. But so just by way of, fact, it's a deeply emotional and sometimes turbulent experience for people. So I do enjoy that about it, that I get to kind of pave the way and handhold through the process, so it can be nice and smooth and actually exciting and delightful and joyful instead of stressful and turbulent.
And traumatic. Yeah. Right.
Yeah.
Well, and the other thing I like about your energy, again, this is as an indigo trait, is that you work a lot. Indigos tend to work a lot from their higher mental body, their higher self. And so they have ways of moving through the world, of being able to streamline things almost like a miracle. Just synchronicities just flow when people who have that indigo talent, and they know they have it and they're using it to their advantage, things will just flow in a direction that it just makes it so much more graceful. So if people wanted to approach you, if they were out there considering a mortgage for a home, same thing, tammy@unify.org is the best way to reach you.
Yeah, I mean, I have a separate email for that, but they can reach me at tammy at unify.org as well.
Keep it simple. Yeah. All
Yeah,
right.
keep it easy.
Okay. So we were just talking about compassion and how when we're working in units of energy with people, whether it be family members or a work situation or service work, that one of the things that Tammy was mentioning is the ability to really have compassion is one of the higher qualities working with group energy: compassion for self, compassion for others.
Mm-hmm.
And then, any other recommendations in terms of self-care or things like that that you also want to talk about?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I think that self-care is something we're all kind of talking about right now. Last weekend, we had Mental Health Day, right, on Sunday. And it was like every person I talked to all week was like, I'm struggling with my mental health. And if you think about it, that's advanced for us as humanity, with where we've come to be able to have a conversation that openly about it. But the risk of burnout is real. It's real for everyone. And it's especially real, I think, if you're trying to work in a space that is in humanitarian work or the consciousness space or ministry, because you have somehow attached yourself to this the higher good, right? Like, or dharma. This is my dharma. This is what I'm meant to do in the world. This is my purpose. And I'm seeing that live out by being able to be attached to this thing that I'm doing. But regardless of where you're coming from, burnout, the risk of burnout is really real.
I want to slow down just for a minute. What you're saying is super important. So basically,
Yeah.
people go out to be of service. They have a lot of people kind of leaning on them, people who may not be, just need some help or whatever. They're leaning on them, but also the burnout sounds like it can come from getting disillusioned and things not working well. And then if you have that attached, then what happens is you might feel like your whole life that you're failing at your whole life purpose,
Right.
because people maybe higher up maybe can't make paperwork go through properly, or people that you're helping aren't following through, like people with addictions or whatever might be happening, right? Suicide, mental health, all kinds of stuff, right?
It can be literally any circumstance. And if you're taking again, that goes back to like, don't confuse your purpose with the path, and don't confuse your purpose with the people on your path, because they're all going to be mirrors back to you of things that are going on, but they are not synonymous with you in terms of where your journey goes next. So use it as information, use the reflection back to you as information, but not as your identity, So I was talking earlier about the word ministry, right? And we have ministry that we do talk about in churches, and in churches, ministry is where you go to do the good works for your local or global community. In governments, in some governments, they have a ministry like the Ministry of Education and such. And so I got curious about that word.
Like in the Ministry of Harry Potter, they have a whole ministry too.
That's right, they do, that they get to do magic in.
That's right.
But yeah, I got curious about the word ministry and wanted to know where it came from. And so I looked it up, and the word ministry actually stems from monastery, which originally came from the Greek monazein, which literally translated means to live alone, which it makes sense, right? Because people in a monastery do live alone, but we don't think of ministry in terms of living alone. And when I watched how that word morphed over time.
That is fascinating.
It is,
wow.
Right? It came from this live alone to directly to the outward facing one is what we give to people after we've spent time alone. And so I was like, oh, wow, this is really, it made me kind of turn introspectively and look at how I was dealing with and encountering and experiencing my own alone time. And I think that with the global turbulence and the exhaustion of the global turbulence that we've all been experiencing, it's especially important that we reframe how we are working with our alone time right now. So alone time, I think the way that we've been experiencing it has been basically like isolation. Because that's how it's shown up. But isolation has this
and
like
it's scary
scarcity.
to people. Yeah, it scares people.
It's terrifying. It's actually one of the contributing factors of the rising suicides that we're seeing.
I've heard so many suicides coming up out of the blue recently. Not out of the blue, but yeah, more than usual.
I lost a friend last week. Yep.
Yes.
And it's absolutely heartbreaking and devastating, because there's, every single one of us would want to be there for each other. We would never not show up for someone if they were in that kind of a time of need, struggling that deeply. But when we don't talk about it and we feel that isolated, of course, that isolation leads to hopelessness. The thing about that isolation is that there's a scarcity inside of it that tells a lie that when you're not in proximity to other people, then you are less than. And we're in a perpetual like vortex of that lie right now. So I'm not in proximity to other people. Well, we used to be able to solve that by, you could go out somewhere and get together for a drink with someone, and then all of a sudden you feel better. You have a little bit of social, fill up your cup, and then it feels better. But the opposite of isolation isn't actually having company, because the immediate Band-Aid of just going and getting company dulls the senses and then just satiates the fact that your soul is hungry, but it isn't necessarily giving it the thing that your soul was asking for. We don't realize the thing that our soul was actually asking for unless we spend intentional alone time. If I'm being alone with myself in a way that I'm intentional about it, like, what am I going to give to me? How am I going to be present with me right now? What do I need in the world? Even saying that stuff out loud, I still have little things in the back of my head that's like, you can't say stuff like that out loud in real life because that sounds conceited or narcissistic. Right. It's so much social conditioning around not being able to take care of yourself. But I need to ask myself that. I need some time to myself to ask myself that, and then to allow all of that to come to me so that my cup can be full. So the opposite of isolation is actually your abundance of presence with yourself, your presence first. And
Excellent. I love that. Yes.
yeah, remembering that like
Mhm.
no one on this planet has responsibility for you or your well-being or your opportunities or your purpose more than you do. So even though you might feel like you're responsible for your kid or you're responsible for your job or whatever, all those things have that's true. They that might be true that you have those responsibilities, but you have responsibility to you first, and you have to fill up your cup in order to fill up the cup of others. So, yeah.
That's a super, super big one. Yeah, I really appreciate that. I know, yeah, there's a couple things, I know that maybe it might be Matt Kahn who had been teaching that to people. I've seen it, other people teach it too, where you just really want to try spending 10 minutes with yourself intentionally. Not
Mm-hmm.
drinking a cup of, tea, not watching TV, not taking a bath. I mean, you can be in nature or whatever, not walking, but literally sitting with yourself for 10 minutes and just paying attention to yourself. And another one, along with that is just asking, when you breathe in, and let's say when you first wake up in the morning, just asking, how do I feel? Not about anything external, but literally just how do I feel? And then throughout the
Mm-hmm.
day, I've noticed that's been rebuilding my nervous system and rebuilding my heart energy, rebuilding my connection to myself. It's just saying, how do I feel? Particularly for people who are indigo energies, indigo souls coming to the planet, we're highly empathic all the time, highly empathic, can't go to the grocery store without being empathic. And so when you just ask the question just randomly, because you're just sitting here in that quietude for a moment, how do I feel? It lets you just get back in touch with yourself. And that will also bring you back to your own purpose, your own higher self, your own higher truth, so that we don't get so lost in the issues that sometimes community brings with that as well. Yeah.
I love that so much.
So yeah, and then the other one that I've recently been taught is just doing the mirror exercise. It doesn't have to take as long, but you put your hand on your heart, one hand on the mirror, and you're just looking at yourself and saying, I'm blessing myself with pure love and light, and you're pulling that in straight from source energy. I bless myself with pure love and light. Bless myself with pure love and light, and it's literally like blessing yourself. It's a pretty cool thing, actually, and
Mm-hmm.
it's helpful, because we are definitely a blessing to all of life just being here. And so bringing that circuitry back is really important. So I love what you're saying. So we're going to take a quick break. So you're listening to Adrienne with My Wild Magic with Adrienne. And I also want to let people know, if you are interested in any other kind of meditations, I do My Wild Magic membership is a unique meditation experience that I do every Wednesday. And you can check it out at mywildmagic.com. So stay tuned. We'll be right back. Oh, here we go. Like I can't hear it very well. Welcome. I am Adrienne, and you are listening to My Wild Magic with Adrienne. We are here with Tammy Scarlett, who is the executive director for Unify.org. It is an organization that works with global world peace. You can participate from the comfort of your own home doing global meditations that really make a difference. There's lots of other things they offer as well that really teach you just how to be a better global human in the world, and how to contribute your light, your essence, your light to higher causes. I can't think of an easier, like Tammy was saying, easier, better way to do it. Tammy also does do mortgage loans in a way all over the country that's easy, effortless. So if you're interested in that, you can reach her at Tammy, Tammy, at unify.org. If you're interested in more of what I offer, sessions, soul blueprints, or you're more interested in, if you're an indigo and how that works, look me up at mywildmagic.com. So we were just talking with Tammy about having, self-love, self-care, and the word ministry, and how ministry really means to kind of spend time alone, to be able to come back to yourself. So no matter what you're doing at your job, with your family, I find a lot of people go out of balance with their self-care, even with family. You know what I mean? Like they have kids and they have this and they go out, or maybe it's their job, or maybe it's their pets, or maybe it's whatever service work they're doing. So I really like that. So one other thing that you have said in our conversations, and I love it, is that we can't escape our humanness. I'm like, oh girl, if we could escape our humanness, we certainly would, right? So you're saying we can't escape our humanness. but we can practice as the next generation to rise to this global challenge, to unify and to be a healthier, more alive, wiser, and more generous as we elevate the world and the collective consciousness of our time. I mean, that is so well put when you said it. I'm like, make sure to put that at the end of every email you send out. Like, that's so beautiful. I just love it. It's like, it should go on my website. So tell us what inspires you about this, and how can we all individually come together and make a difference, from your perspective, like what you've seen in the world with people.
Well, I geek out a little bit on quantum physics.
Yeah.
And I think a lot about that, like the things that arise in quantum physics. Quantum people, sometimes you'll ask people, what does quantum physics mean? And if they've never looked at it deeply, they'll be like, well, it means like the thing's really big, like in outer space. But actually, quantum physics means the things that are really, 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 really small, like all the smallest things, and how the very, 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 very smallest of things in this world behave differently than all the vast other things that we can measure. And it's perplexing. They're like, why? Why does that happen? But it ends up correlating to ways that we can see, like in outer space and stuff like that, right? So when we talk about dimensions and all that, then it turns to something really, really big. So I get to thinking, well, there's got to be something to that. If there's a pattern between the very, 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 very smallest and the very, 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 very vastest, and what's in between is being measured by something we can control. How very human of us to identify this as the factual thing right in here, that what we can control. Yeah. Well, I say all that about quantum physics because I oftentimes look at the human experience and wonder, because people will say like, well, how can there be a God if there's so much pain in the world? Or I don't believe in a higher power because my brother died, or these are all valid reflections and experiences. But I believe that the messiness of life is because there's a very specific thing that we're doing in our human experience. I believe that all things are possible. I'm one of those possibility thinker people where I'm just like,
yeah, totally rose-colored glasses about that. It's always possible.
Yeah, all things are possible.
But that is also, just so you know, a classic Indigo statement. That is, again, classic Indigo, just so you know, because they're thinking from the future, field of all possibilities and potentiality, which all comes back to quantum physics.
Well, and it makes sense to me because it does not feel like a choice. It feels like this is just the way that it is to me. All things are possible. And if I believe that that's true, and yet I know that there's only one set of things unfolding, at least in my measurable perspective. So you could call that in this dimension or in this lifetime or in this experience or whatever. But still, from behind these eyes, that's all I can experience. Then that, like, therein lies the actual beauty of anything that we have ever considered art. If you look at something that is like an art piece that hang on like this, that my dear friend and amazing healer Therese Tucker did for me, yes. She's going to go and she's going to specifically put something. There's not two paintings in that. There's one painting. You know what I mean? She specifically put something on each little tiny, you could go down to the tiniest little piece of that, and there's one little thing there that ended up comprising this whole. My lifetime is made up of moments that are that, where all things were possible, but somehow it backwards combusted into one finite thing that happened in that second. And that is the tapestry of my life. And then one step further is we are related, like we're attached to each other, and our experiences are affected by one another. So now we have the magic of these very, very, very specific and only finite one thing can happen per millisecond, right? That are rolling out in correlation to each other. And now we have this global tapestry. So I look at what it is that where we've come as humanity and what we've learned and where we can go and what's possible. And I see every single second of every single life as a beautiful, finite moment waiting to be unrolled, awoken and unfolded. And I think that we can show up and make a difference just by being us. It doesn't mean it has to take effort. You don't have to be a wizard to be able to do something great in the world. You are great in the world. So I think we can show up as we are and connect with those around us and make all the difference in the world, literally.
Yeah. With that, I think that, the perfection of the human soul is so powerful, and our hearts just to connect to one another. You're right. It's like we're really brilliant little points of light all over the earth. And when we do come together, it does kind of make the whole, gosh, let me think about how this goes for a second. I was just watching a video last night with Santos Bonacci, and he was saying, he was using a word phrase, and it was earth and heart are basically the same words. They mean the same thing, essentially. They're just, so it's an anagram in a sense where the letters are in different orders, but earth and heart are an anagram of each other. And so when we're in touch with our heart, when we're in touch with each other, and we're in touch with the earth, it's all the same thing in that energy. It's really, really beautiful.
That's beautiful.
Yeah, isn't it? Yeah. And I love, everything you've said today actually is quite beautiful. So although it does not hurt to be a wizard, let's not downplay that in this world.
Oh, it's all good. Be a wizard.
It's all good. Be a wizard if you want to be. But along with that is, it sounds like one thing that you're saying is we're not just as we are. Like the fact that we even make it into human form. Like I think people like on the energy level, what happens is that we as human beings think that we want to go up and out. We want to go, oh man, we're going to be better. We're going to be like these great light beings. But in truth, I think what we've missed the point is that we went through 144 dimensions of consciousness to come into human form. It's the densest realm. And we've come into it purposely to make manifest physicality in form. You know what I mean? So we don't need to escape it. We really want to, we don't need to escape our humanness. Like what you were saying, we actually need to come into our humanness with compassion by doing our ministry work of just spending some time and being present, in our own space with ourselves and not being, scared to death of that, but really meeting ourselves in that energy and aligning things. So yeah, any last bits of wisdom you want to share with us before we complete the show?
Well, yeah, I mean, I would just say for anyone who's joining us, if you've been struggling recently or this past year and a half, just know that you are not alone. You are joined by literally millions of people all over the world, and you are loved and you are enough, and the world needs you and the magic that you have within you.
I love that. Love that. Yes. Okay. So again, if you want to reach Tammy, Tammy, Tammy at unify.org. That will help you with mortgages if you're looking at home, purchasing a home, as well as unify.org. You can find them on Instagram, Facebook, or their website. Sign up. They got amazing things that are helping the world. You can do it straight from just from your own home, your own sacred space. And if you want to learn more about weekly meditations or who you are as an indigo, you can contact me directly at mywildmagic.com. All right. Well, thank you for such a wonderful show. Thank you for being on. It's just been so inspiring. So we'll be in touch. Adrienne. We'd love to have you back on.
Thank you.
Okay. Bye, everybody. Thanks for tuning in to My Wild Magic with me, your host, Adrienne Cobb. Each one of us has a soul purpose on this earth and a higher purpose full of creative expression and unique soul attributes. Make sure to tune in next week on transformationtalkradio.com to continue your journey home to your truest self and pursue the path of unconditional self-love. If you would like to learn more about me, visit mywildmagic.com. Again, that's mywildmagic.com.